Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning back into the Advisor's Advantage with James Murphy. We are here with a follow-up visit from one of our first-time homebuyers, one of our favorite first-time homebuyers on the show. Erika Mendelson is here to talk about where she's at in this transaction and how we went from pre-approval letter to sales contract.
You printed it out.
I did print it out, which is somewhere. It's under my computer. So
am I your only first? Have you had other first time buyers on here?
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to tell that you're the only one so far, but I mean, yes.
Oh, right.
You are definitely the best by default.
Okay.
But the best overall, I think. Anyway,
yeah. I tried to set the bar high.
And that you did.
I'm excited to be a repeat person because I feel like I've learned a lot since
You have?
Yeah, I really have.
Wow. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, gosh. I mean, where were we? When I last spoke to you, I was still like, what are we doing? We're looking for places. And so we were looking for places. We had a max of like $500K. I don't know if I should be specific.
I mean, you can talk numbers, sure.
Because I'm an
Listen, we're all family here.
I'm an overshare. And I was like, that's our top. We can't do it. So we looked at places that were $500K, and then they would go into bidding wars. And then we would lose out, even when we went above. Like you were a part of that. And so I was thinking, I think we need to up it a bit. I know we didn't really want to, but my worry was that we were going to look for houses. We looked at houses. A lot of them needed a lot of work. So it's like, we can get a house for $500K or $450 or whatever, but then we're going to have to put $100,000 worth of work in there.
Right.
So yeah, that's the time and the energy and the effort. And so, and others we saw that we really liked, especially around here. But those went into bidding war and it ended up being really high anyway. So we just figured, let's just up it and start looking with a new price point in mind. Mm-hmm. So we found this place in Red Bank and it was, looked great. And they accepted our offer, and immediately I felt like, oh, we paid too much because they accepted our, it's like a
why did you accept that so
22,
fast? Right,
because you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna pay less. We have to. It should be hard, and then once we get accepted, we feel like, oh, did we pay too much because they accepted it? So, but anyway, I think it's a good buy. It's in Red Bank. It's a great neighborhood. It's right by Porosee Park there, and I'm planning on getting a dog and going out there. But we had the attorney review, which was all new to me, and everything looked pretty standard. I guess you might think there's some awkward things in there. I had no idea what to look for.
There's some minor things will get tweaked.
It was really just a little bit of back and forth. Mostly, the house has been updated and renovated, so it looks really good. There's no basement, so none of the water issues or anything like that. And then we had the inspections done, which, the regular inspection, radon, termite. They couldn't find the sewer line to do the sewer line scope, so we're still working on that. Yeah. Because I talked to a plumber today, and he said you need to locate it.
You want to do that.
You need to locate it, and if this house was built in 1951, it's very likely that it has never been replaced, and he was recommending that needs to get replaced, and that's $5,000 to $10,000. So we have to figure out what we're going to do with that, how much negotiating we can do. So yeah, it's back and forth with the lawyers right now and the inspections.
It's something you definitely want to take over. And what I often say is when you buy the house, you buy all the problems that come with the house, right? So any problems that you can resolve before you actually own that, and the sellers are responsible for those problems, you want to make them take care of it.
Well, I mean, they pretty much say as is, but
you still need that inspector.
Yeah, of course. And then it's scary because when the inspector comes, I mean, they're so advanced now. Yes. Like they've got the drones flying overhead, and he,
checking the roof out.
Everything. And he was great. I mean, I like you said, I'm a curiosity, so like I was following him around like for hours, just like, what's that? What's that? Tell me about it. But I think it's good. You want to be able to know what's going on. So, and I learned a lot.
I love that you did that. I always recommend if you can be there for the inspection, the appraisal, you don't necessarily need to be there more often than you're not. But if you can be there for the inspection, it's great because you got some professional now pointing out things that you're like, oh, there's my box. Or there's my lever or switch or
Yeah.
whatever. I had no idea.
Yeah, well, one of the things they also noted is that the electrical panel is actually behind a cabinet, and there's like a little cutout, but one would have to take off the cabinet, like the whole thing, to be able to access it. And he's like, "No, you can't have this,"
Wow.
and he was like, "And I'm not going to take it off because I don't want to,
Right.
damage anything." So you need to get an electrician. You need to ask the seller if he's willing to take off, the cabinet so you can have access to this because it's really important. And then another thing, I didn't even know. So our bedrooms, like the bedrooms, are in the attic, kind of.
Okay.
It's just 2 stories, and then I didn't realize that in the closets there's these little cubby holes that like go out to the actual attic. So he was showing us different parts of the attic.
That's cool.
It was good, and it's scary because when the report comes back, or when I got it, they have to do their due diligence, so they put everything. I was like, oh my god, there's so many problems.
Right.
Like we have so many, and he's like, no, these things are all normal. Like this is what this is however old this house is, it's got issues, but it's nothing to be scared of.
Right.
So yeah. But
I was hoping you were going to tell me. And then we found this secret door where I pulled this book back, and then I've always fantasized about having a house that had something like that. How cool would that be?
There was a house that we saw that had like an amazing finished basement. I just love the idea of just having that extra space. This one doesn't have it, and no extra doors that I know of. But it's a pretty small house, so I don't know where it would. Yeah, I'll have to build it does have a detached garage. Yeah.
So we're moving along in this process. We went from not knowing what we're doing to figuring some things out, tweaking some things along the way, making that adjustment which was necessary with the purchase price.
Yeah.
That put you in a different position, right?
Yeah.
It broadened up your scope of what you could buy and what other options you had. And you're working with a pretty solid real estate professional, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about it. Who is he? Tell us about
David Scalambro, and I hope I'm not messing up his name, but he's awesome. I've been encouraging him to come on the show because
we're gonna get you on here, David. Hopefully, we love prime partners, people that are really fantastic.
Yeah, between you and him and the inspector, I'm like, I got all these people.
You got a solid team.
Yeah, I do have a solid team, and you were mentioning that, and I think one of the reasons I did up the price point was because I kept hearing your words like bouncing around in my head, which is like, we have, this many homes, but we have this many buyers. Yes. And it's really challenging. And everybody wants that house that's like $450,000, like, or $500, and everybody's going to go and bid on that house. And we saw that we would get bid out, and it was like, well, maybe we need to up our game.
Tell us about that process, because a lot of buyers out there are going to be going through that bidding war process where you can very easily get buyer fatigue, right? That bidding fatigue or battle fatigue, whatever you want to call it. But going in and constantly getting emotionally like, oh, this is the one, and then outbid. And then it's like, again, how many times? And what advice would you give a buyer to say, don't give up, and here's why, be encouraged, and what could you say to them?
Well, I think part of that is having a good team. Like you and David were both really like, just have faith. The right house is going to reveal itself. And I would say that we couldn't understand the process until we started seeing houses, until we started seeing like, okay, what does 500,000 get us? Like, it gets us this kind of cool ranch over here, but it needs a lot of work. Right. It's pretty dated. So then what are we going to do? We're going to pay that money, but then we're going to have to pay extra money to fix it up or to make it nice. So I would say just wait until after you start seeing properties and houses, and then you can start getting a better feel for what makes sense. And the properties that everybody's bidding on, you kind of know, like, because those sweet properties in the good locations that are like 450, 500K, everybody's going to want them. Right. So that just became something we knew. Yep. And then the other thing is, seeing those properties that needed to be updated. We thought at first, like, we'll just do that. We'll just update those things. But then I realized, like, I don't want to, I'm tired, like, I'm busy. And then we're going to have to work with contractors, and that's going to cut into our enjoyment of the place. So I guess it just depends also on what everyone wants. And but yeah, just look at the houses and calibrate and then recalibrate.
Recalibrating. I think you hit the nail on the head, and that's patience and faith. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the two ingredients that really will create endurance and perseverance in that sense, right? It's first quarter 2023 right now. When did we start talking to each other? It was a while ago, right?
I said this last time. You've been with me for the long haul, and I greatly appreciate that. Yeah. 2020.
2020. We've got through COVID searching, and it's been a journey. But here we are, under contract, finally in position to move on the home of your new future.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I mean, it's been daunting. It's kind of surreal, actually.
Yep.
But I'm really excited. I like the neighborhood. The house looks great. I can't wait to get a dog.
Yes.
My rental, we can't have any pets, so
What kind of dog are you gonna have?
Definitely, I'm gonna adopt a dog.
Sure.
I don't know what, but I
whoever
think,
calls you.
Yeah.
Whatever dog.
Yeah.
Comes
Same
up
like
to
the
you.
house. Whoever reveals. Whatever reveals itself to me, that will be, that's sort of how I operate. But I know not everybody operates like that. But I think that's a good way.
Listen, sometimes we just got to pick our frequencies in life and just ride it.
Yeah.
Right. And then what comes our way, you accept it. It's on that wavelength, and that's how life is going to be.
And trust. I think trust your intuition, trust your gut. Like if you go into a home, imagine yourself there. I was trying. You can't force it. I think there were a couple homes where I was like, well, it's in our price range.
We could probably do it.
And I would fix up these things, but it just felt weird.
Yep.
And I think instinct here plays a big role.
It really does. It really does. So now we're at that phase. We've gone through the whole getting pre-approved process. We've gone through like what qualifications are necessary, the paperwork, the financials. We've discussed the whole hurdles, right? All the hurdle conversation, the FICO hurdle, loan to value hurdle, DTI hurdle.
Many acronyms.
So acronym, I'm an acronym freak, as I always say.
Yeah,
and
alphabet soup.
This industry is a big alphabet soup.
Yeah.
Everything's an acronym. It's crazy. So now we're at that phase where we know we qualify. We know our debt to income ratio works. We have the money for a down payment. Our LTV is fine. And our FICO is great. So now we're under contract and officially under contract, because a lot of buyers think that they're under contract when they first sign that initial offer.
Right.
Which you're not. You now know you're not officially under contract until in the conclusion of attorney review.
Right. But I haven't put any money down yet.
Well, per this attorney review letter, it's fine.
You're going to tell me how to pay, right?
We're going to go through all that.
Okay.
So everything that you are questioning is based on is explained with this purchase contract.
Okay, which I probably should have read in more detail.
I mean, normally you read these things before you sign.
I did.
I skimmed.
I mean, it was
pre-sign skim, which is fine.
Don't do what I did.
No, but listen, you haven't done anything wrong, because initial deposit is $0.
Okay, yeah.
So you haven't had to give any money. Now you do have to make a deposit if we go through here within 10 days after attorney review.
Right.
And that's when you'll make your additional deposit here in the tune of 10 G's.
Right.
All right. So when we go through this contract, we were talking earlier, and I was asking Erika, where what's the commitment date, what's your closing date, and really didn't know where to find that. So we jumped on there. We jumped on behind the cameras, in front of the microphones, and we figured we'd explain it to everybody here.
We were literally on the phone half an hour ago. And he's like, "You want to just come here and do a recording?" And I was like, "No, I have to work." And I was like, "You know what? I don't feel like working. Yeah, I'll come."
I miss my audience. I mean, we miss you too.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go to page. We're gonna go past. We got page 1 here, page 2. This is on page 3 where. This is what we were talking about with some typos. It kind of has the commitment date and the closing date on the same line, right? But as of right now, so this is, towards this back page 3 of 13 on this contract is where you would find that. It's about a quarter of the way, halfway down the page.
And so which comes first?
Typically, your commitment that comes first, right?
Okay, that makes
sense. So
the
commitment, let me explain the commitment to our listeners as well as
Please.
our buyer. So the commitment date is basically when you are committing to moving forward on this transaction.
Okay.
Right? Up until that point, anything can happen. There can be inspection issues. You could find some major issues with this sewer line and decide, hold on, pump the brakes. I'm backing out.
Right.
As long as that happens before the commitment date is due, then no harm, no foul. Get your deposit back. Everybody goes on their merry way. The commitment date is really the point in which you are committed. The bank, the lender, is committed to giving you the loan. So a commitment would be something where, say, congratulations, you are officially approved for this loan. Advisors Mortgage Group is committed to giving you this loan, provided you provide us the following conditions, right? X, Y, Z, A, B, C, whatever it is.
Okay.
So those would be conditions. And as we've gone through so far, where we've been asking you for documentation to support what we've discussed, we've been asking for letters or anything that goes into qualification process. The letter, any conditions that come from an underwriter will be part of your underwriting process.
Okay.
Right? So an underwriter says, I review this file, you meet guidelines, everything fits in this box. I just want you to give me ABC. Okay. And then that's when you'll have contact with our with your processor, who you just met, Sophia.
Yes,
the lovely Sophia. She's fantastic. And then she'll reach out to you. Congratulations. She'll send you everything in writing with an email. You'll get an email with what's called your conditional list, as well as your mortgage mortgage e-clause. I'm going all over the place here. Your mortgage e-clause is information you'll give to your title company, as well as your insurance company, your homeowner's insurance. Okay. And that just basically says who's servicing your loan and who to send the check to and that kind of stuff.
Okay. So now I know why you wanted the commitment date, because that really impacts.
That drives our timing, right? Because
right.
My focus as your loan officer on the transaction is to make sure we hit that commitment date, because until that commitment date is where you basically say I'm in or not. And if you miss that commitment date, then you're in breach of contract. You're not doing what you're supposed to do per the legal document that you signed, right? The contract. So that's why we want to know that ahead of time, because there might be a situation where in order to get a commitment, you need an appraisal, right?
Right.
So if I have a month, I don't need to rush an appraisal. If I have a week, I got to get on that phone and say, you need to get out there. We got to rush this appraisal.
So, because the only date that's on there is March 31st. And it sounds like, based on everything that I've, been talking with the lawyer about, that is the commitment date, because it was pretty much, you're going to have all these inspections done. You're going to do your due diligence by March 31st. So it sounds very much like
that sounds like what it is, but then we don't know what the closing date is. So we'll figure that out. Typically, the commitment's going to come out to you somewhere around 2 weeks or so before closing, 2 to 3 weeks before closing. Sometimes they ask for a little bit longer if it's a delayed closing. Right? So if it's several months from now you're closing, they're not going to wait until 2 weeks or so before.
Right.
So now at this point, what we do is you and I would discuss the loan scenario. We'll go over interest rates and payments and see where we're at in the market. We'll make a suggestion whether we lock in our interest rate on disclosure, or if we float the rate and see if we can see what the market's doing. Okay. Right? The market is so volatile right now. Anybody who's looking at houses is looking at these interest rates like, what is happening?
And floating the rate does not mean a variable rate.
No, it does not. That's a great question.
Our friend was like, all of this was precipitated. I realized I had been keeping you out of the loop, because our friend came over last night and he was like, so what's your mortgage rate? And I was like, he's like, you don't know your mortgage rate? And I was like, I don't think so. I was like looking through, I was like, I don't think so. Right. And then he said, what kind of mortgage is it? Is it fixed? Or is it, and I had remembered a conversation that we had where you were like, I don't want to fix you in anything. He's like, is it a variable rate? You don't want that. That's like predatory. I was like, no, James would never do anything like that.
I'm not a predator.
Yeah, no, I know that. So I was like, and he's like, that. Yeah, so he starts going off on his thing. So yeah,
it's a valid question. We've been through some crazy times in this industry. There's a lot of people that have been dealt a raw deal, a bad hand, and taken advantage of, honestly, in this market. So since those days, the entire industry has changed. You can't take advantage of somebody, and a lot of those people that were flushed out of the industry when they made those changes. Yeah. So it's good shape, but there's a great question as far as what's a variable, what's the difference of locking and floating. So let's talk about that a little bit. First, let's talk about interest rates and locking and floating. Mm-hmm. So upon application, you have the option to either lock in an interest rate. And that's basically saying, okay, well, here's where the rates are at today. I'm going to capture that and lock it in. So if the market goes up, I can't go anywhere. I stay here. If the market goes down, though, I can't go anywhere. I stay here. So that's the situation with locking. Now, if you float, whenever I'm talking about floating interest rates, I always like to give visuals, and I compare it to like a buoy in the ocean. Mm-hmm. Now, imagine the tide of the ocean is the market, right? As that tide or the market goes up and down, that buoy goes with it. Hence
Right.
the floating, right?
Right.
So your interest rate is going up, it's coming down, it's going up.
Right.
And what we're doing as your professional is really monitoring the market and
Right.
gauging what the volatility levels are and
Yeah.
whether or not we should be locking in or trying to wait it out a little bit,
Right.
potentially based on some technical data we have, this report's coming out or this is going to happen at this date,
Right.
right? And so on. So we may make a suggestion, let's float until that point, or let's carefully
Okay.
float, or let's,
Right.
lock it in because it's too volatile.
Okay. So floating is just kind of like waiting for like, okay, this is good. Let's lock it in
Right.
here. Okay.
Right. So you'll often hear me say something like, we want to lock on the dip, right? And the
Right.
locking on a dip
Right.
is just,
Right. Right.
sometimes I always tell people like, someone will say, well, why did this person get this right? Why did I get this?
Right.
It's a matter of two things: loan scenario and timing.
Okay. So then how confident can we be about what interest rates are going to, because I told our friend, like, no, I think interest rates are going to go down. He's like, interest rates are not like everybody seems to have a different
Yeah.
opinion on it. So who
Well,
is to trust here?
It is, well, trust is a strong word, right? Because you're talking about who can I trust that's going to give me the accurate answer without any chance of being wrong.
And I read your
There-
30-second reports, by the way.
Oh, you
Lise.
do?
Yeah, I do.
Well,
Well, I
I'm
just
glad you
skimmed
get
them
them.
before I came here.
I'm glad you get those. So they do go out on a regular basis. Now, as far as where rates are going, now this is such a hard market to handicap, right?
Mhm.
We've been doing this for 20 years. Myself, I've been doing this for quite some time, 20 years or so, and you spend a lot of time reading technical data, reading the charts, Fibonacci levels,
Right,
daily
right,
moving
right,
averages,
right.
what reports, and you try to watch what a range we're in, because a range will often tell you a trend line, right? So any of these investors out there, or whether you have stocks out there, or you're watching the market, if you're doing any of that stuff, your Bloomberg or any of these channels, you'll see these charts, these little candlestick charts, and you try to follow the trend. And as far as where we're going, right now there's no secret here. Interest rates are heavily tied to inflation.
Right.
It's all about inflation.
So and he was saying like inflation's just going to keep going. They're going to like I don't
Right.
know.
Well, there's some things that we might know that he may not know, like
Yeah.
the CPI report coming out May 10th, right?
He's
Where we're
kind of
going
a
to see.
doomsday. I should preface it with he's sort of like a doomsday kind of guy.
And
So I take what he says with
I
a
am
grain
a
of salt.
sunshine all day kind
I'm
of
with
guy.
you.
Right?
I'm with you. We were just saying we would be good buddies after
Very
he's
good.
coming to my housewarming. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But staying in that optimistic perspective, we
But
have
not naive.
no, not yet.
Optimistic.
Plan for the worst, hope for the best, right?
I'm
But
with
we're
you.
still going to plan and prepare.
Yeah.
Now that said, there's different reports and different data coming out, right? Like for example, we're looking forward to the March 10th jobs report coming out. We're looking forward to the CPI numbers coming around the 14th. We're looking forward to the CPI numbers coming out in May, right? May 10th. And a lot of these forecasted reports, or what we're expecting on these reports, we're expecting to see these numbers more favorable to the bond market,
Right.
which is where the interest rates are tied to. What we're expecting in May, we'll see what happens, but there's a lagging indicator, shelter costs that's tied, that takes about 40 some odd percent, 41% or so of the CPI. Now, that's a big chunk of that inflationary core number. And that's a lagging indicator, so it hasn't been updated. So in theory, if you look at the core inflation number, if it wasn't for that lagging shelter cost, that would be much lower right now. We're not
Okay.
seeing it. The market's not seeing it. Interest rates aren't seeing the benefit from it
Right.
because they're not seeing that cost removed. Now that will be updated in May, which is when we are predicting that's the starting point
Okay.
of better rates.
So
Now,
you're thinking about maybe floating till that time?
well, depends
How
on
long
you.
can you
You're not
float?
going to be able to, right? Because you've got to
Right.
lock now. Like let's go
Yeah.
back to that, right? So that's a little bit about rates. What the difference of the floating and locking in. Now your other question was about variables and
Yes.
fixed rates. So we've all heard about the ARMs, right? Those adjustable rate mortgages, and those are variable rates, right? Because they vary based on a particular time, an index, and the margin that you've signed up,
Right.
with the mortgage. So those adjust, and you don't want those. A few years ago, you maybe wanted those, right?
Right.
When that trend that I talked about, that channel that I was telling you about was heading down, right? That 2020 time frame where rates just
Right.
getting better and better. You're like, oh my
Right.
gosh, we're at 3%, we're at
Right.
4%, we're at 3%. Can you believe we're at 2%? Did somebody just get a 1%?
Yeah.
Now, if you had a variable rate in that time frame, your monthly mortgage payment's going down
Right.
because it's adjusting and
Right.
it's along that channel and we're moving down. Now, obviously rates have been spiking. You don't want those variable rates.
Right.
And, you know, depending on your risk tolerance, you probably don't want a variable rate anyway.
Right.
Right? Let's just get stable. Let's go to 30 year.
Yeah.
On some occasions, why would you take a variable rate? Some ARMs have lower interest rates.
Okay.
So you might say, I'll take a 3-year ARM. It's locked for 3 years. I'll take a 5-year ARM. The rate I choose is locked for 5 years. And I'm only going to be in that house for 2 more years. Okay. Well, if you're getting a better rate on the 5-year term, or the 5-year ARM rather, excuse me, than the 30-year fixed, and you're only going to be in there for 2 years, you're going to sell it before it adjusts. Not a bad move, right? So a lot of these discussions or these options you do are based on what does the big picture look like?
Right.
How long are you going to live in this property, right? So now when we talk about interest rates at this point, we're talking higher rates, but we're talking about short-term costs. And that's what I keep talking about when I have these conversations. Regardless of whatever interest rate you're in. If your rate is 10% right now, it's not 10%, thank goodness.
Right.
But did everybody see her face?
Well, yes.
But whatever the rates are,
6%,
7%, whatever it is, that's the short-term rate, right?
Right.
You're not going to be in that rate for 30 years, let alone 12 months potentially, because of what we're expecting. Now, again, who has a crystal ball? None of us. Not one of us can tell you exactly on this date. We go by technical data, and based on the reports and based on where we see inflation heading is how we're gauging our rate estimates, if you will. So that's what we're leaning on. Now, as far as your particular situation, we can evaluate rates, see where we're at today. Market is getting crushed today, and sometimes my clients will hear me say that, and they say, "What does crushed mean?" Crushed just has to do with what's happening out there in the technical data that's involved. So there are days like today we wouldn't be locking in because you can see the ugliness of being down that significant today. 10-year treasury is up substantially today. Today is not your best day to lock in. And here's that you can see that trend line that I'm talking about. These since February 2nd, the market's been going down, which means rates have been getting worse.
Yeah.
Right? So again, when these tend to come down, you can see the potential of a bounce. And that's what we're hoping for.
Does this fluctuate day by day?
Hour by hour.
Oh my goodness.
Minute by minute sometimes. And
so you're just like monitoring, you're like, we got it. Come on, let's lock it in.
Kind of.
Wow.
I try not to stare.
Wow.
And there's because a day like today, I'm gonna say, close her up. Right? It is not a day to do this.
Yeah.
And unless you said to me, James, we're closing in a couple days.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice. Right?
Okay, so it has to be locked before the closing.
You have to lock within a short period of time before you close. Typically, they like to see 5, 6, 7 days or so, about a week.
Okay.
Because there's different disclosures that need to go out. For example, the closing disclosure. You'll also hear it's an acronym, of course, for it. CD. CD needs to be issued to you and signed by you a minimum of 3 days before closing.
Okay.
You're obligated to do so. Now, you can't get a CD out until the interest rate's locked. And basically all of your certain costs are determined, right? So your appraisal must be in, title quote must be in, homeowners insurance must be taken care of.
Right.
Those things must be dealt with because those impact your APR, and you need to have that all locked in before we can issue the closing disclosure.
Got it.
So there's different. We'll get to that part.
That'll be on
the next episode.
I was worried because I realized and you said, oh well, interest rates are rising. I was like, we should have locked it sooner, but it sounds like we couldn't have locked it.
You couldn't have locked until you had the property.
Right.
So and I chuckled a little bit before where you're like, what kind of mortgage guy you have? You don't know what rate you have? Right. Well, when your mortgage guy doesn't even know you're under contract, it's hard to say what your rate is.
Right. I know. I should have been CCing you.
It's all right. Call me in at the end. It's fine. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So that being said, interest rates, it's a delicate situation. It's a stressful conversation right at the point. Can we get a little bit here or a little bit there by waiting? Yes. In cases you can get 0.25% back, or you can get 1/8 or so in the rate. And sometimes it's just a matter of timing it the right way. And that's
Okay.
that's what we'll be doing. But that's why your closing date's also important
Right.
because we need to know when to lock. How much time do we have?
And that's a question I'm gonna need to ask our lawyer. To ask their
Your
lawyer.
attorney or your real estate agent
Right.
should know.
Okay.
Your attorney who can absolutely answer that question.
Yeah.
No. As far as the rest of this contract, I mean, you just go through it. There's often notes on the back that you could see if they're relevant or if anything's important to you. You know, if the seller is giving furniture or something else that's going to be added. If you're contingent upon something like a sale of another property, you'll see those comments back here to the back of the report. A lot of this stuff is standard mumbo jumbo, if you will.
It seemed pretty boilerplate, but
yes.
I still should read it. Still read it.
You should skim through it just so you know what to expect, because sometimes there's things that will that may not be explained to you properly. Right. But they're on the contract and may be implied or assumed that you know this is supposed to happen because you signed the contract and it's on there, right?
Well, and the attorney was good, or the paralegal who was working with me, Denise, she went through and she was like, this looks pretty boilerplate, and
the paralegals will typically be one of your best friends.
She's been great. She's been great.
A good paralegal is great.
She's been great. I mean, Denise, come on the show.
Good job, Denise.
Yeah, she, even after the inspection, she was like, "What about this? What about this? What about this?" So I sense that, I feel that she's prompt. She advocates. So yes.
So and honestly, I think you're in good hands.
Yeah.
Feels like you're in good hands. Right?
Yeah, I do.
So, and how much more encouraging and comfortable is that when you're seeing the stress of the news and your friends chit-chatting and telling you, "Oh my gosh, the doomsday's coming."
I take what he says with a grain of salt, but also I'm not watching. I mean, I'm wondering, do I need to be doing more diligence in it? But they're like, "No, James got it."
But that's why I'm here, right? So that's where we're going, right?
Yeah.
You know that your real estate professional is going to take care of anything on that property, right? Your inspector needs to do this. This needs to be happening. Did you call for this? Where are your utilities?
Yeah.
Dave's got you under control, right? Your paralegal, she's going to handle any kind of legal obligations. Your attorney's right there, obviously. She's working with your attorney, but you got a good team there. You got me on this side, as your advisor, guiding you along this transaction, helping you get the best possible rate available.
It's huge. I mean, especially someone who's so green, who really doesn't know anything about this process, like being able to feel comfortable asking the questions, not being told what to do, having things explained, like between you and David and the inspector, and it, like, I don't feel dumb, asking any of my questions or feeling, and I just, I guess that would be a big takeaway here. It says points to bring home is to feel comfortable with the people that you're working with, so that you feel like you're an integral part of the process, and it's not just like these people taking care of things on your behalf.
Yes. Well, it makes you feel like you said, you're the leader of this team, right? Everybody's here to help you, right? So you're like, you may not realize that you're running the ship, but you are. And even if it is like your people saying, "All right, this is what you should be doing.
Right.
You want to do this," you still have that call. Like, "Oh, I don't want this." For example, a survey. Do you need a survey? Surveys are recommended, but they're not required, right? If and I would definitely recommend you get a survey, unless you didn't need a survey. If the seller had a survey that was already done, there was nothing done to the property, the title company can verify that and validate that. You might be able to save yourself $800 to $1,000.
I did go, based on the paralegal's recommendation, I contacted Oprah, not Oprah Winfrey.
Oh, not the Oprah.
Yeah, Oprah. OPRA, which I guess is like they let you know if there have been any
so what you did is Open Public Records.
Open Public Records Act. Open Public, Oprah. Yeah, I know
it's an Oprah request, which anybody can do.
That's an easy acronym. Yeah, yes. and so I just asked for any information about any remediation or anything that had been done to the property. They didn't find anything. But tell me about a survey, because I'm not really sure what you mean by that.
So a survey is just it's if you ever seen the blueprints of the property line, right? That's part of your survey.
Okay.
Right? Survey just surveys your land.
Yeah.
Right? It says if there's any easements on the property. We've had situations in the very far past. I've had a situation where a client waived their survey and then found out later on that their fence was on the other neighbor's property line, and then they got into an argument with that seller, with the neighbor. They weren't friendly, and sure enough, the neighbor pulled the card. By the way, you got to move your fence.
Yeah.
Huge cost that the buyer had to incur,
Yeah.
having no idea because he didn't get the survey.
Yeah.
Right. And those are the kind of concerns you have.
No, that's really good to know. Because there is a tree on our property
something like
that
that.
is
Yep.
dying. I mean, there were branches everywhere, and the inspector noted it too. But I'm like very concerned about this tree because it goes into the neighbor's yard as well, and I see that there are some very depressed branches that
Yeah.
look like they're going to fall, and I'm like, oh, whose responsibility is that? So I definitely. Yeah, that seems like it would fall under the survey.
So that's why they're recommended. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, as I said earlier in the show, when you buy the property, you buy the potential problems that come with
Right.
it, right? So you want to kind of have all of your answers up front, because if there are issues that need to be taken care of, it'd be nice if the seller took care of them prior to
Right.
you. Right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure. Well, you could, I guess, is there ever like you're asking too much? Like there were little things like, for example, and I don't know if, when does the town come in to like, do they do a survey too?
no,
Okay.
they'll do an assessment on the property, but
That's the appraisal.
that's
Or no, that's
the
something
So the
else.
appraisal is to validate the value or the collateral for
Right.
your loan.
That's what I
right?
figured.
So it's your lender that's going to order the appraisal.
Right.
Now, when the appraiser goes out, they will notify the town because they have to see if there's any open permits and that kind of stuff. Once you acquire the property, you have to get a CO at the end.
Right. Okay. So the
right?
certificate of occupancy. So, right, that's somewhat of a
That's
survey,
when the town
but
knows.
that's more of.
That's when the town will set you up to be resurveyed.
Right.
So your survey will come usually maybe the following
Okay.
year or assessment. I said survey. The assessment will come later on
Okay.
after you own the property. Because they will base largely what you purchased it for.
Right.
Not so much the appraised value, because the township doesn't
Right.
get the value, the
Right.
appraisal.
Right. That
But they'll
makes
see what your
sense.
purchase price was. So if you were paying taxes on that property that were at a value or an assessed value of $400,000,
Right.
then you buy that property for $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
You can be sure that your property taxes will go up
Yeah.
the following year, right? Because
Right.
now your assessed value is based on a much higher number, and the way property taxes work is there's a rate, right? A tax rate.
Yeah.
And that rate is multiplied against whatever the assessed value is divided by 12.
Okay.
And that's what your annual property
Okay.
taxes are.
Yeah. And feel free to cut me off at any time. So, because we can always, I don't know what your time is. And anyway, but I have another question.
You're welcome.
So what I had found, so this guy had this property listed, I guess, not long ago for like 525. And this is what I was told, that when the bank came to appraise it, they appraised it higher, and then the buyer didn't want to. So the seller went up, and the buyer didn't want to do it, so it fell through. Is that something that could happen?
Could happen. It normally wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
You're under a contract, right? So the nice thing about this contract is it's a legal binding document.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if what you're talking about is often in a bank-owned sale, right? Like if a bank is selling you a property, they're recouping costs, right?
Sure.
So that property was foreclosed on, or the bank took over the note, they took it back, and now they're trying to offload it. Well, they're going
Right.
to try and maximize their
Yeah.
profits. So if you're getting this short sale for X, or you're getting this sale that's on a depressed property for $300,000, and now it comes back as an appraised for $400,000. Yeah, highly likely the bank is going to come back and say, we want to up this purchase price now,
Right.
because they don't care if you move forward. They want the
Right.
max price, whether it's you or the next person. But in most cases, it's very
I'm
rare
very
that
curious about
buyer-
what happened before.
Yeah, there had to be something more to it, because it's odd that a seller would be able to do that. Because again, unless one party breaches contract,
Right.
all must adhere to this document.
Right.
So what's a breach of contract? You not getting a commitment on time. Breach of contract.
Right.
Your deposit is due on a certain date. Breach of contract, and you
Yeah.
don't give it. You're supposed to close on this date. You don't close. Breach of contract.
So, like, it's probably moot right now, but I'm just so curious about what happened before, because it was listed at, I see, just a few months ago.
Yeah.
This is where I felt like kind of nervous, like, did we overpay? Where it was listed at 525, then the deal fell through. It was under contract. The deal fell through, and then he upped the price $70K. So
It could have just been the market. There could have been
Okay.
multiple reasons why it fell
Okay.
through, unless you know why it fell through.
It doesn't really matter.
Well,
think,
I mean,
at
it
this
matters
point,
in a
but-
sense where if it was let's say the buyer lost their job,
Right.
they're going to pull out of that contract.
Right.
It's going to fall through. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with the property.
Right.
Has everything to do with that buyer. So, and then your seller might say, listen, that was X amount of months ago. I've seen these sales happen since then.
Yeah.
I can get this amount for my house. I'm going to up my price by $70,000.
Yeah.
And that's it. Could have been something as a brand new agent.
Right.
You know that he got a different listing agent.
Right.
Listing agent said, I think I can sell for more. Here's your
Right.
comps, and this is why.
And we won't really know, like,
When the appraisal comes back, you'll know if you've overpaid for that house.
right. And so what happens if it is appraised lower than?
Great question, Erika.
Well,
You are
yeah.
providing all kinds of content for our buyers.
Yeah,
I love
I'm-
this. So it's a valid question because it does happen on occasion. If the house under appraises, there's two things that could potentially happen. One, you have to put down more money, or two, the seller has to drop the price, right?
Okay.
And here's why those are your two options. Remember we talked about loan to value, that second hurdle, right?
Right.
Your loan to value is your loan amount divided by the value of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the value of the property is determined by the appraisal and the purchase price. What is considered, what is used in that ratio is the lower of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say your purchase price is $500
Mm-hmm.
and the house appraises for $450.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now your loan to value just went up, right? Because that value piece went down because we're
Right.
now using the lower of the two. And when you started, it was 500, right? Appraised purchase price, appraised value.
Right.
But now the house under appraised, so now that purchase price is irrelevant. We're now putting it, well, no, I shouldn't say irrelevant, but now we're looking at the appraised value as our
Right.
loan to value factor. So now your loan to value went from maybe 80% to, let's say, 87%.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple things happen, right? You can take the higher loan to value as long as it's still within your qualifying window, right? Because you can go up to you can go up to 95% loan to value in
Right.
this scenario. But now you got to pay mortgage insurance,
Right.
right? So now, because now you're exceeding that 80% loan to value, and now things change with your monthly payments. So then there's
Right.
conversations to be had with that. So that's an option. The seller could say, you know what, you're right. The house isn't worth 500. Here's a third party appraisal. It says it's worth 450. We're going to drop our purchase price to 450. Now, that's an ideal situation.
Right.
And
Yeah.
probably not
How-
as common as you would
Oh,
like
so
it to
it's
be.
not.
Right.
Okay.
It depends on the market, right?
Right.
In a seller's market, seller's going to say there were 200 people behind you. I'm going to take the
Right.
next
So
one.
that's what I'm thinking. Like regarding appraisal, what are they actually looking at? Are they looking at the potential, or they're really just looking at like as it is right now?
Great question. Before we get to that, let's finish up that other piece. And the other piece is just the difference. No, I'm going to
No,
address that.
thank
'Cause
you
it's a great
for
question.
because I will be all over. So thank
Listen,
you for reining
I'm ready.
me
I
in.
chase squirrels for a living.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Okay.
So basically what you can do is you can make up the difference. I talked about bringing more money to the table, right?
Right.
That 7% difference, that 7%
Right.
gap, that 50 grand or whatever it is.
Right.
You could always bring that extra money to closing. In that sense, do you get that feeling that you're overpaying? Maybe, right?
Yeah.
Because you have an appraisal that says it's worth this, but you're still paying 500.
Right.
Some people find that hard to accept.
Right.
I will tell you the last 2 years,
That's like
7
the
out of 10
norm.
people were doing that,
Yeah,
right?
that's the norm.
Because
yeah.
it's a seller's market.
Right.
And they're going to say, listen, if you don't want this,
Right. Someone else.
I
will.
have
Yeah.
all of these offers.
Right.
Somebody's going to pay it.
Right. So that
And
affects
true
the
enough.
value too. I mean, not in this case, but the demand itself,
It does.
has a huge impact.
It absolutely does. So when the appraiser when the appraiser's going out now, and yes, because as all these people are going, in 2020, 2021, $200,000 over asking. Well,
In cash.
cash, it's
Yeah.
crazy. That's driving up home values, and that's where the appraiser comes in.
Yeah.
So the appraiser, you asked, how does the appraiser justify or determine the home value, right?
Mhm.
What they're doing is they're looking at a mile square radius, typically. Stay within a mile square radius of that property. And this house sold for this. It's the same style, same room count, similar square footage. We're going to use that as a comp. They'll take 6 different comps.
Right.
And they use 3 main ones. So
Okay.
3 main properties that these are the 3 that are most identical to this subject property.
Right.
And then here's some extra properties that are kind of close.
Okay.
They'll make adjustments we're gonna do a show with the owner of an appraisal company coming up.
Oh, okay.
And I'm gonna have him in here, and he's gonna explain these more.
So are you all the ones spearheading the appraisal?
So we order the
You
appraisal.
order it, and then you have certain people that you work with. Okay,
So
yeah.
nowadays you have to go through a third party
Sure, that
AMC,
makes perfect
right?
sense.
So we're not allowed to actually speak with the appraiser or have any interaction.
Yeah, that seems
we go through
right.
We go through a third party company.
I totally trust you, but yeah, it seems right.
But that was part of the whole Dodd-Frank thing.
Yeah,
where they said, because what you had people doing, unscrupulous people
of
doing,
course.
is say,
of course.
I need this value,
right.
and I send you a lot of business.
Right.
Make sure it happens.
Of course,
right? Yeah. So those are the Wild West days. Things were crazy back in 04, 05, and stated loans, and anybody can get one. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But so the appraiser will justify your value based on what comparables are out there.
Right.
And a comparable is what the house is identical to yours.
Yeah. I did look around the neighborhood to see the comparables or comps. That's
the cool thing. It's like the comps.
I didn't know what it was comparable but now I know. And it varies. Like you see some of the ones that are similar to ours that are a little less, and then you see ones that are significantly more. So I don't know, but we'll see. I'll be curious.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but that's where you're going to get your answer.
Yeah.
Right. And what is it and how much is it is based on what those comparables are out there. Okay. So that'll bring us to our next show.
Oh, yes.
I think the next episode is going to be Jubilee, congratulations, you've closed. Let's talk about what went into the underwriting process. What was that appraisal like?
Yeah.
And so on. And I'm sure our audience is going to be very excited to see that next episode.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to happen in that next episode too. So this is always fun.
I feel like we should do like some kind of emotional thing with the thumbnails, right? So we put them out. The first one could be you like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Second one's like, yes.
I think it's third one. I don't know the whole way through.
We could do
more.
That's
just me. That's just me in my life. So.
You're gonna be You're gonna be
no, I feel good. I'm excited. Yeah, all good things, and this has been a great process with good people, so that makes all the difference.
Well, when we work with good people will work with good people, make good transactions.
Yeah,
and nice and smooth and easy.
I tell people all the time, like, no, you don't understand. They're like, yeah, but they're still working on commission. I'm like, no, but they're not like that. They're amazing people, and I know that. Yeah,
and again, we talk about this Dodd-Frank thing, and that's, in the olden days.
Yeah.
You could have someone where you're working with someone that might give you a higher rate because they were going to make more in commission.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore.
But
I don't mind what we get, but you don't pay me, right? So the company pays, but what rate you get isn't changing my income.
Right. And also you've been with me for a while and I haven't done anything, so you've really, and I think just having that genuine connection makes a big deal. It's a big difference.
The connection has truly been our pleasure. My pleasure specifically. And looking forward to getting you to the finish line.
Yeah.
Helping you throughout the way. And we'll be back. We'll be back with the final episode. And everybody, I'm sure, is already excited for you.
We should do the final episode in our new home.
In your new home?
Yeah.
On location?
On location.
I love this idea.
I don't know.
I think we could probably make that happen.
I mean, we'll see.
We'll see. Or maybe even a short clip at closing.
Yeah.
We'll figure something out. And then we'll figure out the rest of what we do from there.
Sounds good.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Same.
Erika, thank you for coming back on the show.
Thanks, James.
I'm sure our audience appreciates all of the advice and questions. And for you out there, you've been watching The Advisor's Advantage with James Murphy and the lovely Erika, giving you the advantage you need for the experience you want. We'll see you on the next show.